Hey, good morning, traders. Welcome to the opening print. Man, I feel like that new intro really had some like extra.
Intense, man.
Any, anyways, guys, welcome to the opening print. Glad to be back here. I'm Fleri. With me again this week is Aaron from Mind Unbound, and we are coming to you guys as always live from the Place Your Trades Network. Today, we are going to be talking about balance areas, some larger accumulation potentially. What does that mean for us, the markets, and how can we sort of try to take some of this conversation into actionable, tradable ideas, whether it's in the futures contracts or in the event contracts? So excited to kind of get that conversation up and running. As always, guys, today's podcast is brought to you by Tradeovate. They've built a custom app dedicated for only trading. Yeah, they're over there, dedicated for trading these event contracts. That's what we're all using here at Place Your Trades. So definitely use the link in chat if you want to start using the Tradeovate web app for free, where you can follow along with our trades or just make your own picks. So just remember that once you sign up, you will get a free trade from Tradeovate. So make sure that you get that by using the link that is in our chat or on the placeyourtrades.com website. That website's amazing. The team has got a bunch of just really cool stuff up on there. There's a newsletter coming out. We've got a bunch of new content coming forward for you guys as well. Some different time slots. We're going to be rotating around a little bit. I know I saw Shy Girls doing a Twitter Spaces, which is exciting, and just a bunch of cool stuff coming from the Place Your Trades Network. So with that being said, man, Aaron, how's it feel to be you today, brother?
Feels good to be me, man. Excited to talk about balance and accumulation.
I know this is kind of your pocket, right? This is your zone. So, yeah, man, I think let's kind of let's start this conversation around that. So, before we jump into some charts and look at that, I think let's just talk about balance. Like, what is balance to you? Do you have a clear way to define it? Or are you in more of that sort of like nuance? You're kind of looking at maybe a handful of things to define whether it's a balance area or not. Because I think that's the tough part if you're a new trader or just new to the concept of balance is, one, what kind of chart can you derive that from? And then two, do you have a subset of rules? Can they remain consistent, or do you start to inflect a lot of nuance and experience into how you're defining a range?
I think it's more art than science, to be honest with you. And so there's a couple different things that I'm looking for. So on a shorter time frame, kind of the shortest I'll go is a 3-day balance, really. And I'm really looking for similar highs, lows, but really a rotation around a pretty clear value area in the middle, and with a similar point of control on 3 days. So where most of the volume is kind of trading towards the middle of that range. And then I'll generally define the ranges of that balance. But oftentimes, kind of like what we've seen recently, when you get super sloppy action, sometimes you come up with these really large balance areas, which I find to be really helpful for looking for breakouts, for breakout failures and things like that, where you can target more like swing trades as opposed to trading the intraday rotations around that balance. And that's what we've kind of seen a lot recently, is much sloppier action than we've seen the last several months.
Right.
So I think that speaks to some larger players entering the market. And then I'll look for a potential larger balance to dictate where that breakout might go.
I think something you said there is interesting in the like you can sort of, I hate to use the word predict, but you can sort of like assume or glean that there is a larger move coming based upon the fact that we're in a balance. So it's if you kind of go to just the dynamics of how a market moves, right? We go from balance to imbalance back to balance. And so if we're in a very clear balance, which I think we, when we jump to the charts here in a second, you'll see, like, at least the way I look at it, the last 5 days in NQ, very clear balance. ES is a little bit, whatever, maybe a 4-day balance, something like that. But I think to your point, it's like, okay, well, if we're very, very obviously in a balance, however you define it, well, what comes next? Well, what comes next is imbalance, change, something different. So whether you're right or wrong on the direction of that balance, because it could certainly break up, it could break down, it could continue to balance for a while. Either way, what comes next is definitely going to be imbalance. The market will not just sit in a 400, 500 point range for however many days. But Yeah, I think that's kind of the cool thing. So then that leads us into, what are some of the ways that we can trade that? So what I'll do is maybe I'll pull up some charts here and we can kind of take a look at that. Let's go to this view here. I think that's kind of helpful. Let me turn that stuff off there from a graphics perspective. There we go. So not only do we have the event contracts up here, but we also have a balance area chart of NQ. So as we're looking at this, I mean, essentially what we're looking at is we're looking at a TPO chart here, right? And we've got, as I would look at it, say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 days of balance. With yesterday, the red arrow is the close, with the close above this balance area zone. And I think for me, this kind of is half of the journey, right? So when we're in balance, we can trade sort of destination style, right? It's kind of like that classic value trade. We trade from value area high to value area low, back from value area low, back to value area high. So we can kind of trade through, sort of the HVN. We can trade through the fair traded price. When we're in balance, we can do the same thing, right? So we could be shorting against 436 all day, which worked until it didn't, right? And they fought for that 436 yesterday pretty hard. We never really got the balance area low, but still the idea is like you're fading the edges, right? Trying to trade back to the other side. And now today where we find ourselves, which I think is going to be interesting for when we get into the app and we start placing our trades, is we closed above this 5-day balance in NQ. So like, what are our options here as far as you see them from trade ideas?
So you said something really important there. My buddy at Revere Trading used to always talk about the market's always seeking a fair price to do business. And that's what we see in a balance area, is just a price-based representation of a rotation around what is the fairest price. And your box is kind of aligning that fair price in that range. And you can see we're just kind of rotating around that area. And, when I look at that, I do see the break above, but I have to kind of look at what information is coming. Like, there's no real new information that's coming into the market as of right now, today. And so the break above, I'm a little suspect of ahead of earnings, personally. So is the market going to seek a new fair price to do business ahead of that news? I think that's where I get a little bit, do I trust this move? Do I trust this break from balance? The good thing about identifying the balance areas is we kind of know when that move gets rejected, right? So if we get a strong move back inside of balance, we can kind of at least manage risk around those areas, thinking, okay, if it's trading back into that fair price, it's likely to resume that rotation back inside the box. And I think generally, if we break from that box, we might hit the next extension higher, which would be essentially just doubling that box and putting it to the upside.
There it is. Yeah.
So you can create levels based on that. You can create a lot of things based on that. But then I would be looking, if this does make a clean break out of here, for a rotation through whatever the range of that box is higher.
Right. I think again, like you said something there too that was cool, is you can sort of also predict to some degree what the expected move is, right? So if we're leaving balance, that volume, that inventory typically will get redistributed in an even price movement, whether it's up or down. So in NQ we're looking at roughly like a 440 point balance area here. So we would, in theory, to the upside, be trading, to 11.8, 11.9 almost, if we were to resolve this balance completely to the upside. Now, there's some stuff to the left of this chart that's going on that, has an impact on that as well. But I agree there. Excuse me. As far as, the macro of like, there's earnings this week and can we continue to move out of balance and things like that. Totally agree. It's not something that I spend a ton of time thinking too much about, maybe to a fault, but I'm basically just on the patterns, kind of like you said, like that what is an expected move outside of the area. And then for me at this juncture, there's really two things. Like we've closed above the balance. So it's either going to be a breakout or B, a peak and fail, right? So in a failed breakout attempt. And if we fail to break out, which would mean that we accept back inside of like 11,436, we're probably going to see a multi-day journey back to balance area low, which would bring us back to about that 11,000 level, which was a huge wall last week. So I think because we closed above this area yesterday, the market has to do something, whether or not any of the macro things, that you mentioned, take place. Like in theory, this balance area has now been breached, and something should happen. Now we can accept just slightly above this and balance or whatever. Given what we've seen, I think we'll probably see it sometime in the balance area, out of the balance area, back in the balance area, because this market's been whipping around. But I would look for continued imbalance, especially after like 5 days of balance. I'd look for continued imbalance. So I think this will be kind of fun, because I think we both have different ideas of which way this might break, and we'll have a good opportunity, maybe a little gentleman's bet heading into the poker game on Friday night. But I like where this is headed. One last thing, maybe before we jump into the app and placing our trades and talking about these event contracts for this week. I'll just quickly talk about how I define balance, and then I'd love to hear from you some of that nuance, because I'm more of a rules pattern based. I try to keep myself out of the trading process as much as possible, just because I'm an idiot and I make mistakes. So I like to just have the lines be the same every week. So for me, balance is simply overlapping value to the right. So if this day's value overlaps this day's value, these are in balance. If this day's value overlaps this day's value, they're in balance. And that box continues to grow until it doesn't. And then as soon as I get a day where this day's value does not overlap this day's value, I would categorize that as imbalance. And so not only was yesterday our first day of imbalance, but we also broke above the 5-day balance area high. So for me, I'm looking for some volatility coming into today's auction based upon those things. And that's just basically how I would define balance. And then if I can define balance, therefore I can define imbalance. And then these imbalance days, I call them island days, just because they're like island value. There's no overlapping value. Typically it's going to be a naked POC, things like that. But I like to wait for the next day close to sort of categorize that. So that's how I look at balance. I think you've got some charts up. Let's take a look at those, and let's see how you define balance.
So in a similar manner, I do keep an eye on value, but I'm also looking for price more specifically, to define the edges of those balance. So you're using overlapping value and then price, and I tend to do something similar, but I do focus a bit more on the price. And so we're sort of looking for the same thing here, and you're looking at the 5-day balance, but I'm also looking at this last major balance. So if you look to the left of that purple box that we're trading in right now, we had a pretty major balance in June and July, and we're breaking back inside of that balance now. And then we have a 3-day balance in that little yellow box, which is a recent balance which we've just retaken. And so I also look at past balance areas to see where resistance might come in. And so I am also looking for a bit of a break from balance, but I think it's personally not going to run too far. I think it's going to run into some overhead supply in and around that yellow box. And so I tend to agree with the upside and break from this balance, but then I think we run into some more major issues from past areas of balance where we could run into overhead supply and then pull back down towards even possibly just retesting this 5-day balance that you outlined from the top. So I tend to use them almost in perpetuity. So I'll keep coming back to prior balance areas because they will continue to work for both support and resistance. As you can see, the bottom of that purple box has been recently tested, failed there, and now we're breaking back above that. But I think that area needs a little more attention, even if we do break to the upside.
I mean, that kind of goes back to that concept of moving from balance to imbalance and back to balance. And typically that imbalance move is to a previous balance area. So, keeping those on your chart is definitely something that I think is super important, or at least being aware. Trying to think of what it was. Maybe it was like a few months back where we had it was like a 12-day balance or 14-day balance, and we dropped out of that thing. And when we shot back up directly to that balance area low, and that was it. It was done after that. I'm pretty sure they knew, like almost to the point from that 16-day balance area low back down to where we are now. So it's definitely very key to keep those in mind. So I think one last thing here is, you mentioned these larger areas. I would call that accumulation. I call it accumulation, whatever, accumulation distribution, however you want to talk it. Like if we're in a bigger area where we're seeing, this, multiple balances and or just price kind of lingering, again, whether it's multiple balances or just like this bigger, broad pattern of some sort of price accumulation, I would also argue that we're in some version of that now. You mentioned earlier the June sort of larger balance area on this chart here in the purple. We're kind of doing something similar to that now. At least from a price action perspective. So, there's a lot of the, bottom callers and all that stuff. And listen, I day trade, so it doesn't really matter if the bottom was in today, tomorrow, or next week. Doesn't matter. I'll trade the 5-day ATR today. But, just to kind of have that conversation, if this were looking like some larger accumulation area, is there a way that you personally, Aaron, like you look at sort of the potential of a bigger accumulation like this? Is it similar to just like one big, huge balance area? And I think earlier also you talked about like a swing type trade. Is that something that you would be seeing in the markets right now? And how would that affect your day trading really?
So when I talk about using these as targets, I'm going to switch to a different chart here. So we had a recent major balance up here. So this is a multi-month balance where we had 3 months in a perfect balance. And we recently obviously broke down, then provided resistance. We tried to hold back above and that failed. And we went exactly to the extension there. Those major balances is where I'll often look for swing type trades. So buying calls and things like that when we get down to those areas. And even looking for then when we hit those areas, the YOLO type trades and going for way out of the money with the event
long shot.
Yeah, the long shot trades with the event contracts. I mean, you can really get paid on those. If you buy them way out of the money, those are great from these types of areas. And so those are the types of areas where I'm going to look for the big swing trades is when we're hitting the major balance area extensions, especially when they line up with other areas of importance, such as that. And in the current one that I was just sharing, I think there's the potential for this to really explode to the upside. I just feel like we're going to run into some trouble in this big LVN here. And so, but if we were to break above that, I think we're going back to this prior balance area high, and that's super important. This 12,200 area is pretty important for me. If this can hold, if we can break above that, that's a pretty big move. That's 500 points there. And NQ, if we were able to break above that, then I'm looking for a move all the way up to 12,200, and then who knows from there.
Love it. So let's close the charts here. I think the cool piece about this and this whole conversation around the balance area and the accumulation zone is that there's some larger trade opportunities and some potential for big moves. And so again, if we kind of have an idea that we're in balance, going back to what you said, and I love this, is that, well, what comes next? If we're in balance, the next comes imbalance. And so imbalance typically looks like volatility, wide ranges, no overlapping value, things like that. So can often be difficult to trade. And I think that's where these event contracts give you a really cool opportunity to practice some of these trades in theory before you're kind of getting into them. So before we place our trades, just give us a quick reminder, what can we expect out of these event contracts? And when we're talking about the event contracts that we're trading on the Trade app, we'll take a walk through those as well. But, to you, what are these contracts? How can we use them? And what will sort of the viewers see when they hop into the app?
So when you hop into the app and you scroll through, I mean, it has all the major markets, but all the major futures markets. And for me, days like today are actually specifically beneficial for these types of contracts, simply because you can place a non-leveraged bet on an extension from a break from balance. So you can look for those large moves and place a levered bet just for an intraday trade that we're going to move all the way towards that extension. So the extension from here puts us up by that 800 area that you mentioned. And it's a pretty simple way to trade it. And you don't have to put a lot of money on the line, and the payout is fantastic. So I specifically like to use these for breaks from balance. I'm looking for a slightly different trade today personally. And I think
Bring it on.
and then we misalign as we approach some of these strikes. And so I actually love these specifically for breaks from balance because it gives me a way to hold a trade all day. I tend to trade on a shorter time frame when I'm trading futures, and I can put these in and let them run in my direction. So that's usually how I'll use them. And also on a break from balance that fails, same thing. I can then go for the lower strikes and play it back towards the other direction. So, or pick the no from the top of that balance that we're not then going to break back above.
Well, I appreciate it, man. Let's jump in. Let's place some trades in these event contracts. I've got the app up, so what I'll do is, as you're kind of talking about what your trade idea is, maybe what I'll do is I'll just kind of pull up the strikes and all that. So, with that being said, Aaron, why don't you place your trade, brother?
All right. So I do agree with the thesis of this break from balance, but I'm not very confident that that break is going to hold. I feel like we're not going to break out before earnings later this week. So I think I'm going to wait on my trade personally until we trade higher. I'm looking for a push higher to then go with the 11,600 no. So I would wait until we approach 550 to 600 and then look to get in at a better price, that 11,600 no, thinking that we're not going to trade through that LVN, that major LVN, thinking that we're not going to break above that prior 3-day balance and get all the way above 700. So I'm going to wait until we trade up higher and then look to play it the other way for a potential retest of that 5-day and that we close back down kind of where we're trading now, if not below.
Okay. So right now, those 11.6 no's, $14.25. So to your point, yeah, maybe a little bit more than you'd want to pay. And I think if we popped up there, we could get a better premium. You can see how easy that would be to just kind of click on those and pick those up amongst all the other different strikes here in NQ. But let's get Drake out here. Let's see what he has to say about this whole thing. And I'll put in a little 2 cents too. So guys, in the chat, let us know what you think. Is Aaron's 11.6 no a fade or a trade? I gotta fade it, man. Let's see what the chat says too. We'll get in here, but this is kind of funny because we've had this whole conversation about balance, and we're both going to basically take the same strike on probably the opposite end. So last week I faded myself by not fading you, and I think we both ended up okay because both of our picks were profitable at some juncture throughout the day. But yeah, I'm gonna have to just go fade here. I'm going on team breakout. As long as we open up above that 11,436 in NQ, which is, as I was drawing it, balance area high. Tuesday's open drive lower. We're basically gapped up above that now today. I'm going on team breakout and more imbalance, more non-overlapping value, and I want to see us kind of push into that larger zone that you kind of outlined and some of the other stuff above. So I'm personally going to go fade it. For my team, looks like it's kind of mixed in chat as well amongst some of the different social media things. So your 11.6, what price would you like to see there, just as people are following along?
I'd probably like to get them under $10. I would look for
2 to 1.
Yeah, so at least a 2 to 1 trade on that because there is the potential to bounce up there and hang out towards the top of that prior 3-day balance. But if I can get them for between $8 and $10, I would take a stab at that.
Okay. All right, well, I'll jump into my pick. This one's going to be kind of easy because, again, we kind of had this big balance conversation. And when Aaron and I first were kind of meeting last night and this morning, although we were seeing the same setup, we were just seeing it in different ways. And so I'm, again, on team breakout. I also, in all fairness, I bought a bunch of the 11.750s last night. So let's take a look at the strikes. So here on the left, I'm in the Trade of 8 app. I'm actually going to jump into NQ here. And you can see they give you a nice opportunity to just kind of chart it. You can kind of actually see where the strikes are and where price is trading. And then if you wanted to, you can kind of scroll to see all the different strikes here, or you can just pull up the strike list. So we pull up the strike list. These 11,750s, it's only 250 points away. I mean, our average range right now in NQ from a 5-day ATR perspective, 330 points, right? So 330 points is our average range on NQ. So I bought a bunch of these at like $1.50 last night and this morning, the 11,750s, just a personal trade. I think that these have a cool opportunity to be worth like $4 or $5 on a push up into that 600-ish area on the open. But for my trade, this is just going to be perfect because I'm going to take the 11.6 yeses. I should have done it before we started talking because they've gone up $1.50 since we did this. But I'm going to take the 11.6 yes. So I'm going to basically just take the opposite side of your trade. The idea is that we're breaking out of balance, all those things that we talked about, but I'm going to go for further imbalance and that this break from balance holds. Here you can see the 11.5 strike is this white line, the settlement. This 11.6 strike, you can see, is just kind of in the meat of this 20-day HVN. And the 11.750 is up near sort of like the highs of this. And also you can see it's underneath the ATR high. So that's a 5-day ATR band. And we could certainly close above that. And big, strong push-up days tend to do that. It is pretty rare to see a bullish close above an ATR high. It happens a lot more on the low side. But the fact that the 11.6 strike has a ton of room for the ATR range, we have not shoot up like hardly any of the range overnight, is just setting this up for a big move one way or the other. You're on one side of the coin. I'm on the other. I'm going yeses. I wish I would have bought them earlier. So we'll just go yeses. You can see you can do quick order here. If you wanted to work a limit order, you could also work a limit order. Say I wanted to only pay $5. I could come in and then set like a limit order at 5. Just for the sake of time and just kind of getting in here, I'll just go ahead and place a limit order and you can see just filled, right? And, you know, got in at 650. Should have bought them at 450 when we started the show, but that's okay. Getting advantageous price is kind of part of this game as well. So let's get Drake back out here. It'll be interesting to see what everybody says about this, and then we'll kind of go from there.
All right, you guys. Fleri is hyper bullish. Thanks for going to 750. Let us know what you think of that. You going to trade or fade Fleri's hyper bullish bet? I mean, I like the push higher. So I like the push higher. I think you're going to get a shot to take a profit on this either way. And so the money, that's right. You could probably scale out and get out of a few of them at least at 100% and not have to worry too much on the pullback and kind of be free rolling towards the middle of the day. I like for the push higher. I'm just looking to take it the other way personally because I think it will fade eventually ahead of news. I just think that people will take profits personally. But
fair enough. Well, listen, man, another week here in the streets. This is a clear fade of each other. So I wish you luck today. All the bulls that are in Camp Fleri, let's get it done. All the like fake bulls in Camp Aaron, good luck today. I wish you the best as well. But anyways, guys, we've done our analysis. We've placed our trades. We're at the same strike going different directions. It's about time for the opening print. We've got about a minute. So whether you're fading it or trading it, make sure that you hit that like and subscribe button, guys. It helps us out a lot, helps us with the algorithm. Follow us on Twitter at Place Your Trades. Like and subscribe on YouTube and Twitch and whatever else you're using. We are live streaming on Twitch, Twitter, and YouTube now, so definitely check that out. And head on over to placeyourtrades.com if you want to get your chance to win the weekly giveaways. And there's a bunch of other fun stuff over there as well. Like we said, newsletters and things like that. A lot of great things coming from the Place Your Trades team here in the next couple of weeks, different outlets and things like that. So appreciate you guys taking the time to like and subscribe. And then don't forget to register over on Place Your Trades so that you can get that free trade from Trade of 8 which is the app that we're using to execute these trades. You can check myself and the other team from Orderflow Labs at Orderflow Labs on Twitter and orderflowlabs.com. Aaron, where can they find you, brother?
Hit me on Twitter, Living Right Co.
Awesome. All right, everybody. Good luck today out there, and take care. We'll catch up again real soon.
Take care, guys.